Ever feel like you got totally blindsided in like a debate or an argument?
Oh,
Not
no.
even by like the facts themselves, but just like how the whole conversation getting kind of,
It's hijacked.
yeah, hijacked.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
that sneaky power of issue framing. And it's like, it's happening all the time.
All the time, yeah.
From like business deals to like social movements.
hmm
And today
We're going deep.
we are going deep on this.
Yes.
Using a fascinating but
Yes.
pretty dense academic article as our guide.
Yes.
It's called
Frame or Get Framed, the critical role of issue framing in non-market management.
That's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful.
But so important.
So important.
You
yeah.
might be thinking academic article sounds kind of dry.
A little bit, yeah.
But trust me, this is about understanding how to wield influence.
Ooh, I like
This
that.
is about power.
Okay.
So after this deep dive, you'll start to see the world and the way people try to shape your opinions in a whole new light.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Okay, so first things first.
Yeah. Can we just like define this whole issue framing thing?
Sure,
It's
okay.
more than just like stating your argument, right?
Yeah, it's not just about like what you say.
Right.
It's about how you present it.
Okay.
It's about deciding like what parts of an issue to emphasize, which facts become like relevant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how that same information can actually lead to totally different conclusions depending on the frame.
Oh, so it's kind of like those optical illusions?
Yes.
Where it's like the same image can look like two totally different things,
Exactly.
depending on how you're looking at it.
It's not about changing the facts, but it's
Yeah.
about changing how people perceive them.
Okay, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So how about like a real world example
Sure.
to kind of make this a little more concrete?
Yeah, the article opens with this case study
Okay.
that I think illustrates this perfectly, and it's the DP World debacle.
DP World.
Yeah, so this was back in 2005,
Okay.
Dubai Ports World.
Okay.
A global port operator
Mm-hmm.
wanted to buy some U.S. port operations.
Okay, so they were going to be managing some ports here in the U.S.
Exactly.
Got it.
And they had passed all the security checks.
Okay.
They had White House support.
So like all...
Clear. Seemed like a done deal.
So if they pass all the security checks, then like, were the concerns about security like unfounded?
Well, that depends on how you define like security risk.
Okay.
Initially, the issue was seen through like a very technical lens.
Okay.
Does DP World managing these ports
Mm-hmm.
pose a like tangible threat?
Okay.
But then
Yeah.
Senator Schumer comes in
Oh.
and reframes the entire issue.
Okay.
He starts asking, should a country with ties to terrorism be controlling our ports?
Oh, so it's not about like a technical assessment anymore.
Right.
It's about
It's about perception,
perception,
fear.
fear, national security,
Wow.
like all of that.
So even though like the facts on the ground hadn't changed at all,
Not
the way that the issue was framed,
totally shifted the public's response and the government's.
emotions ran super high.
Oh, I bet.
Public outcry.
Yeah.
And despite no change in the actual security assessment,
Mm-hmm.
the deal collapsed.
Hmm.
DP World had to sell off all their U.S. assets.
See, this isn't just some like academic theory. Like
Yeah.
imagine you're like pitching a project at work
Yeah.
and someone reframes it from being about like cost saving to job cutting.
Ooh,
Suddenly everyone in the room is listening with a very different.
totally different.
Yeah, totally different ear, right?
Exactly.
That's framing at work.
The DP World case really shows how framing can influence everything.
Yeah.
Like who gets involved, what they care about, where the debate takes place,
Yeah.
what information is used,
It's what?
and even whose support helps or hurts you.
Okay, so framing,
Huge.
huge. Yeah, incredibly powerful.
Powerful.
And the article outlines like 5
Pathway.
distinct pathways
Yeah.
through which this power operates.
That's right.
Can you kind of walk us through those?
Absolutely. So think of these pathways as like different levers. You can pull
Mm-hmm.
to shape what the article calls the non-market environment.
Non-market environment.
Essentially any situation where it's not just about buying and selling stuff.
Okay,
Things like regulations,
got it.
public opinion, social movements.
So like how the DP World deal went south
Exactly.
because of like public and political pressure,
Mhm.
even though it made sense from like a purely business perspective.
100%.
Yeah, okay.
That's a perfect example
Okay,
of the non-market environment influencing the outcome.
gotcha.
So the first pathway is all about bringing in new actors
Okay.
Framing an issue in a way that attracts a wider audience
Okay.
can totally change the power dynamics.
So it's about like building a coalition.
Yes.
The more people on your side, the more influence you have.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the article gives the example of pink slime.
Pink slime.
Yeah, or what the industry called
Okay.
lean, finely textured beef.
Okay.
This had been used safely in ground beef for years.
Okay.
And the initial framing was all about like nutritional value and safety.
Right.
But then
And
media got involved
oh.
and reframed the whole issue.
Okay.
Media outlets, particularly ABC News,
Okay.
started calling it pink slime,
Okay.
showing these like really unappetizing images
Right.
and asking, should we be eating chemically treated slime meant for dog food?
Oh, wow. Okay, so they shifted the frame from being like a technical, scientific kind of thing to being something that's super emotional and like everyone could have an opinion on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Suddenly, everyone's a food safety expert.
Right.
Public outcry ensues.
Of course.
And despite the safety being unchanged, the industry gets decimated.
Wow.
So this social acceptability frame, as the article calls it, brought in a wave of new actors, parents, school boards, politicians, all because of how the issue was framed.
That's a really powerful example
It is.
of how like bringing in these new voices can totally change the game.
Cody.
So if I was like a company
Yeah.
trying to avoid the fate of pink slime,
Right.
how could I have countered that framing?
That's a great question.
What kind of information could I have highlighted?
I think you could have focused on transparency,
Okay.
like showing the production process, emphasizing the years of safe use, maybe even partnering with some credible third-party experts
Okay.
to vouch for the product's safety.
Right. So getting some other voices in there.
Exactly.
Okay.
You could have humanized the issue a little bit,
Okay.
showing the impact on like workers and families in the industry.
So it's about being proactive
Yes.
and like shaping the narrative
100%.
before someone else does it for you.
Controlling that initial frame is crucial.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But what if you're dealing with players who are already involved?
Okay.
That's where Pathway 2 comes in.
All right. Pathway 2.
This pathway is all about shaping the interests of existing actors.
Oh.
Not necessarily by adding new ones. Got it. But by shifting how those already involved actually see the issue.
So you're playing on their existing motivation,
Yes.
making them see things in a light that like aligns with what they already care about.
100%.
Okay.
And a great example of this is the Australian mining tax debate
Okay.
of 2010.
Mining tax. Okay.
So the government proposed this new tax on mining profits,
Okay.
and they framed it as a matter of fairness.
Okay.
Like, Australians own these resources.
Yeah.
They deserve a fair share.
Seems reasonable.
Seems reasonable, right?
Yeah.
But
I'm guessing the mining industry had a different frame in mind.
they did.
Okay.
They launched this massive campaign
Okay.
called Keep Mining Strong.
Keep mining strong.
And they argued that this tax would cripple the industry,
Oh, wow.
scare off investors, and ultimately harm the entire Australian economy.
Okay.
They even used the term sovereign risk,
Sovereign risk.
which usually applies to like unstable countries.
Wow. So they made it sound like Australia was going to become like an economic pariah
Basically,
because of this tax. That's pretty savvy framing.
it was incredibly effective.
Yeah, playing on people's fear.
Fear of economic instability.
Yeah. Yeah.
Public support for the tax plummeted.
Yeah.
Business confidence took a hit.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the government had to back down.
Wow. So they really reframed the issue so that the public saw their own interests
Yes.
as being directly tied to the fate of the mining industry.
Exactly.
That's framing mastery.
It is.
If I was the Australian government,
Yeah.
how could I have countered that framing?
I think you could have focused on the potential benefits
Okay.
of the tax revenue,
Right.
like funding schools,
Yeah.
hospitals, infrastructure projects, things that directly benefited the public.
Right. So connecting it back to,
Tangible benefits.
yeah, things that people care about.
Exactly.
Okay.
You could have highlighted the fact that other developed countries
Mhm.
have similar mining taxes
Yeah.
without experiencing like economic collapse.
Right. So kind of like normalizing it a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Hmm.
So it's about finding that way to connect your frame to the tangible benefits that people actually care about.
Exactly.
Speaking of like choosing your battles,
Yeah.
Pathway 3 is all about switching to a more favorable arena, right?
That's right.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that different contexts have different rules, different power dynamics,
Right.
different audiences.
Mhm.
Sometimes the initial setting for a debate might be stacked against you,
Okay.
but by reframing the issue,
Yeah.
you can shift that conversation to a different arena where you actually have more leverage.
So it's kind of like choosing the right court
Yes.
to file your lawsuit in.
Exactly.
But on a grander scale.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that analogy.
The great example of this is the case of Reuters.
Okay, Reuters, the news agency.
Yes.
Okay.
Versus China's state-run news agency.
Okay.
So this was back in 2006. Yeah. Xinhua, the Chinese agency, was trying to muscle into the financial data market.
Okay.
Which Reuters dominated at the time.
So this is like classic David and Goliath situation, but with a framing twist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Initially, there was a temptation to frame this as a freedom of speech issue.
Right.
China censoring information, stifling the free press. But Reuters was smart.
Okay.
They chose a different path.
So instead of fighting a battle they were probably going to lose,
Right.
They decided to change the battlefield altogether.
Exactly.
What did they do?
They reframed the issue as a trade violation.
Oh, interesting.
Arguing that China's actions were anti-competitive.
Okay.
And violated international trade rules.
Okay.
And this allowed them to take the issue to the World Trade Organization.
Ooh, the WTO.
A global arena where they had more leverage.
So by shifting the frame,
exactly,
they accessed like a more powerful system.
Yes.
To fight their battle.
That's the key.
Did it work?
It did.
No way.
They won. And they got China to change its rules.
That's incredible.
It really highlights the importance of understanding the different arenas where issues can play out.
Right.
And using framing.
Yeah.
To access the one that best serves your goals.
Okay, this is blowing my mind wide open.
I know, right?
We've covered like 3 incredibly powerful pathways.
3 down.
But I know there's 2 more to go.
2 to go.
So we'll dive into those in the next part.
That's good.
Okay, so we're back and we're talking about
the 5 pathways.
The 5 pathways of framing power.
Framing power, yeah.
And honestly, I'm already starting to see the world differently.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's like you've given me a secret decoder ring.
That's the power of understanding framing.
It really is.
It's everywhere once you start looking for it.
Yeah. Okay, so we've seen how framing can like bring in new players and like shift the perceptions of those who are already involved.
Right.
What's the next lever we can pull with framing?
Pathway 4.
Pathway 4.
Okay. This one gets to the heart of information overload.
Information overload, yeah.
Like in complex situations. There's just a ton of data.
So much.
Evidence arguments just swirling around.
It's overwhelming.
It can be.
Yeah.
And framing helps to cut through all that noise.
Okay.
By deciding what information is considered relevant.
Okay.
And what gets downplayed.
So it's kind of like a filter.
It is like a filter.
Shaping what people actually pay attention to and use to form their opinions.
100%. And this is relevant to everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Not just like politicians or CEOs.
Right.
Think about pitching an idea at work or even convincing your friends to try a new restaurant.
Yeah.
You're always choosing what information to highlight.
That's so true. I actually like fell for this kind of framing the other day.
Really?
Yeah. I was reading an article about like a new tech gadget. And it sounded amazing.
Okay.
All these cool features, glowing reviews.
Yeah.
I was ready to buy it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But then a friend of mine was like, hey, did you notice that article was sponsored by the company that makes the gadget?
Oh, interesting.
And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And suddenly I was like a lot more skeptical.
Yeah, of course.
About all those glowing reviews.
Right, the information was the same.
Exactly.
But the context totally changed how you interpreted it.
It really did. Yeah.
And the article actually talks about this debate over pharmaceutical patents and access to affordable drugs, which I think highlights this pathway really well.
Okay, yeah, that's a hot button issue for sure.
Big time.
Where does framing come into play there?
So drug companies, naturally, they frame this around intellectual property rights.
Okay.
They highlight the massive investments in R&D.
Right, all the research.
The years it takes to bring a new drug to market, all the costs involved.
Right. I'm sure there's another side to this story.
Of course. Critics of Big Pharma, they focus on the human cost of these expensive drugs.
Right.
They highlight the millions of people who can't afford life-saving medications. The suffering.
And preventable deaths.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They focus on the affordability of producing the drugs once they've been developed.
Okay.
Like the tiny cost per pill compared to the exorbitant prices that are charged.
So both sides are using data.
Yes.
But the frame determines which data is seen as like the most important.
Exactly.
Or even like the most factual.
You got it.
Wow.
It's not enough to just have facts on your side.
Right.
You need to frame those facts in a way that resonates with your audience,
Okay.
connecting them to their values and their concerns.
It's like they say facts tell, but stories sell.
Exactly.
You need like a compelling narrative.
You need that narrative.
Around the information.
Framing shapes the story people tell themselves about an issue.
That's a good way to put it.
And that story determines which information they'll find most convincing.
Wow. Okay, so this pathway is about making your data work for you. Yes.
Not just having it exist in a vacuum.
Exactly.
Okay, this is making me want to go back and analyze every argument I've ever had.
I know, it's fascinating.
It really is.
But we got one more framing pathway to explore.
Okay, let's do it. What's the final lever we can pull?
This one's called mobilizing assets.
Mobilizing assets.
So think about it.
Yep.
Every company, every individual, even every country has certain strengths, resources, qualities they can leverage.
Like their reputation.
Reputation, yeah.
Expertise, financial resources.
Exactly.
Their unique selling points, so to speak.
Their unique selling points.
Okay.
And framing can determine which of those assets become most valuable.
Oh, interesting.
In a given situation.
Okay.
You're essentially playing to your strengths.
Right.
And highlighting the aspects that give you an edge.
So it's not just about presenting the facts in a certain way.
Right.
But also about presenting yourself.
Yeah.
Or like your side of the argument.
Your side, yeah.
In a way that aligns with your strongest assets. 100%.
Okay.
A great example of this is the case of Cisco.
Cisco, the tech company.
Yeah. Versus the Chinese tech giants, Huawei and ZTE.
Okay, I remember that.
This was back in the early 2010s.
Yeah.
Huawei and ZTE were emerging as serious competitors in the telecommunications equipment market.
Right.
And on a purely technological level, they were often outperforming Cisco.
Oh, wow.
Offering really competitive products at lower prices.
So this must have been a tough spot for Cisco.
It was.
How did they use framing to their advantage?
They brilliantly reframed the issue, shifting the focus away from pure technology and toward national security.
Oh, interesting.
So they, along with some U.S. policymakers, started pushing the narrative that Huawei and ZTE were tools of the Chinese government, posing potential security risks for American companies and infrastructure. They raised concerns about espionage, data breach.
So they tapped into that fear of like the other, that instinct to protect national interests.
Exactly.
Okay.
Suddenly being an American company became Cisco's biggest asset.
Yeah, it didn't matter as much that Huawei and ZTE might have had better tech or lower prices.
Exactly. Cisco was the patriotic option.
Yeah, the secure option.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
It tapped into a really powerful emotional current.
For sure.
Yeah.
And did this framing tactic ultimately work for Cisco?
It played a major role in shaping the market.
How so?
It made U.S. companies wary of doing business with Huawei and ZTE. It led to government investigations and even restrictions.
So even though on paper, Huawei and ZTE might have seemed like the more logical choice, Cisco was able to win by framing themselves as like the patriotic option.
Exactly.
Okay.
They successfully mobilized their Americanness as their strongest asset.
That's incredible.
It's a powerful example.
It really is. Okay, my head is officially spinning. I know, right?
With all these framing possibilities,
it's a lot.
We've covered the 5 pathways, bringing in new actors, shaping existing interests, switching arenas.
Shaping information.
Shaping what information matters and mobilizing assets.
You did it.
These are some seriously powerful tools.
They are. And like any powerful tool,
they
can be used for good or for manipulation.
That's true.
That's why it's so important to be aware of them, both to recognize when they're being used on you and to think carefully about how you use them yourself.
That's a great point. So for our listeners who are like eager to put these techniques into practice, what are some key takeaways, some practical tips for framing effectively and ethically?
So the article boils it down to 4 essential elements for effective framing.
I'm ready.
First and foremost, know your audience. Know your audience.
Right. You can't just like blast out any old message and expect it to work on everyone.
Exactly. Effective framing starts with really understanding who you're talking to.
Their values, their concerns, their existing beliefs.
Right.
Like what resonates with them? What are their pain points?
Yeah.
You need to tailor your frame to those specifics.
So it's about speaking their language.
Yeah.
Meeting them where they are.
Exactly.
Both literally and figuratively.
100%.
Okay, I like that.
The second key is to frame early.
Frame early? Okay.
First impressions matter.
Mm-hmm.
Once a frame takes hold,
yeah,
it's incredibly difficult to shift it.
So it's about setting the agenda from the get-go.
Yes.
Controlling the narrative right from the start.
Exactly. If you let someone else frame the issue first,
Oh.
you're already playing catch-up.
Right.
You're on the defensive,
Yeah.
trying to reframe it in your favor,
Mm-hmm.
which is a much tougher battle.
It's like you're trying to change the channel.
Yeah.
After someone else has already picked the show.
Exactly.
Okay, what's the third element of effective framing?
Credibility is crucial.
Okay.
Your frame has to be backed up by your actions.
Right, you can't just talk the talk.
Exactly.
You gotta walk the walk.
You got to walk the walk.
If your actions contradict your frame,
Yeah.
people are gonna see right through it.
People can spot hypocrisy a mile away.
That's so true. Okay, that makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
Actions speak louder than words, as they say.
They do.
What's the final key to effective framing?
Have a clear goal in mind.
Okay.
Like, what aspect of the issue are you actually trying to influence
Yeah.
with this framing? What outcome are you hoping to achieve?
So it's not just about framing for framing's sake.
Yeah.
It needs to serve like a specific purpose.
It's a means to an end.
Yeah.
Are you trying to attract new supporters, change public perception, influence policy decisions? Knowing your goal will help you craft a frame that's targeted
Okay.
and impactful.
So it's about being strategic and intentional
Yes,
with your framing, not just like throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks.
exactly.
This has been such an incredible deep dive.
It has.
We've gone from what seemed like a dry academic article
Yeah.
to like a powerful toolkit for understanding how the world really works.
It all comes back to that, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah.
Framing is about power, influence, persuasion.
Mm-hmm.
And these dynamics are at play everywhere.
It's true. Now that I'm aware of it, I see framing everywhere.
I know, right?
In the news and advertising, even just in everyday conversations.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Start paying attention to how issues are presented.
Okay.
What's being emphasized, what's being downplayed,
Mm-hmm.
whose interests are being served by this particular frame.
It's like you're giving our listeners a superpower,
Yeah.
a new way of seeing the world.
And like any superpower,
Yeah,
it comes with responsibility.
that's true.
We've talked about how framing can be used strategically,
Right.
but it can also be used for good.
Right. It's a tool that can be used to manipulate, but it can also be used to illuminate, to find common ground,
Yeah.
to build bridges instead of walls.
Oh. Think about how you can use this knowledge
Yeah.
to make a positive impact.
Mm-hmm.
How can you frame issues in a way that promotes understanding,
Right.
empathy, and constructive dialogue?
That's such an important point.
It is.
Framing can be a force for good in the world
It can.
if we choose to use it that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You now have the power to shape not just your own perception, but the perceptions of others.
That's powerful.
Use it wisely, use it ethically, and use it to make the world a little bit better.
That's a perfect note to end on.
It is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive
Of course, sir.
into the fascinating world of framing.
My pleasure.